Hello, my name is Jason, and I'm going to start a new series on the topic of love. My former series was about the despiritualization of man and how um, dangerous it is that our society is ignoring or de emphasizing the spirit too much. And I would come to the conclusion that we do have a spirit, but then, of course, the next question is okay, so what about it? If we do have a spirit, how do we take care of it? We're a very science based society now. And I will say already off the bat, just as I repeated many times in the other series, none of this is anti science. However, if we focus so much on science, that means we're focused on the physical and ignoring the spiritual. And this has become, I think, a problem. And one reason we've done it is because science has actually done a very good job. So this is not a criticism of the effectiveness of science. It actually is because we have uh, done so much through the scientific method to improve physical situations for humankind that I think we now often turn to science even for things that aren't physical, and we deny even that the non-physical exists, or that if it does exist, it doesn't really matter because we can't do anything about it. I don't believe that's true, and if you want to check out that series, I show you how we intuit that we actually do have a spirit, and that most of our most cherished beliefs demonstrate that we believe we have a spirit, including the ideas of free will and love and the I don't want to say sacredness. That's going a little far for some people, but the uniqueness of the individual, the importance of the individual. That on a scientific level, we're just bodies like other mammals, and there's no reason we couldn't necessarily treat humans poorly if it furthered the cause of the entire species. But we can't view our own species that way, because while we are a species, we also revere the individual. We can't. That's why we have human rights. The rights you have simply for being a human being, and the reason we think this is because we believe humans are different than animals, not just that there happen to be the same species as us, but there's actually something more to it. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about love because I'm going to argue, and I think I'm going to maybe even assume or intuit, and I don't think this is even controversial. This is probably less controversial than the other topic about the spirit. Even if people don't believe in the spirit, I believe almost everyone would agree that love is something that people need. That love changes people for the better. We have a phrase, right? This is hurt people hurt people. And I think it's equally, the opposite is also equal. I think loved people love people, or cared for people care for people. And let's face it, we have probably more movies and songs and arguments and stuff about love than just about any topic. So we know it's important. And so we're going to look at the topic of love, and we're going to define it, and we're going to look at some of the common misconceptions about what love is, and then we'll go from there and see how love is important for the spirit. And if love is important for the spirit, what sort of love? Many would argue there's more than one kind of love. Some languages have more than one term for love. We, in English, just use love, but we often use different adjectives, descriptors: brotherly love, or paternal love, or motherly love, or romantic love, or that kind of thing, right? So I'm going to start with some ideas of the history of love in your life and mine. Now, obviously, everyone's history is different, but I think most people's personal history of love goes something like this. We are born. In fact, we are born through an act of love, right? Making love is a euphemism for the act that leads to the creation of another human life, right? And I know that unfortunately there are so many cases where love is not really that involved in that creation of life, and I know there's a lot of people who are not as loved by their parents as they ought to be, or maybe not loved at all, maybe even abandoned. And that's one of the great tragedies of human existence, is to be is to not be loved by your own parents. So I feel great pain for those people who have experienced that, but I feel that most of us have experienced at least some decent amount of love from our parents. And anyway, we all agree that's how it should be. Whether it happens that way or not, we should be loved by our parents. So I'm going to go down the road of what I think is kind of a quote unquote typical or normal, maybe typical is not right, maybe normal is better, or expected life. So you're born to two people who love each other. And their love for each other is actually large enough, and maybe even overflowing, one might say, so that they not only love each other, they want to share their love with a yet non-existent child. So they plan to have one, usually, not always, but usually. And even if they didn't plan, they still are usually looking forward to the day of that child's arrival. And they're preparing to love that child, to take care of that child in so many ways. And not just to take care of them, but even to enjoy the child and to shower that child with affection. And they get pleasure from it. They get pleasure from loving that kid. And the kid, if they are born to that, they're loved from day one. And we experience this. This is the love of the parent, the good parent at least. And the child should come to a conclusion at some point in life that their parents love them regardless of their success levels, and regardless of their behavior, and regardless of any of their actions, that their parents love them. This is how we start. We start with what you might call unconditional love. You could say it's conditional, in that the condition is that you're my kid. That's the condition, and you've already met that, and you'll always meet that. So it's kind of, I guess, mincing words, or not mincing words, but splitting hairs, to say that, yes, it's conditional, but the condition's already met, and it can't be unmet. Or just to say there's no condition at all. You're my kid, and that's it. So I'll always love you. Now we gotta look at that word love. What does that mean? I'll always love you. I'm going to get to that a little bit later when I compare and contrast this love with the next love we usually experience. So in our families, we're loved, hopefully, simply because of who we are. Just because I'm a son, I'm loved by the parents. And hopefully, I'm loved by a sibling, just because I'm a sibling. Yes, there's fighting and jealousies and all that kind of stuff, perhaps, but they all care about each other. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, that just because my parents would love me no matter what I did, doesn't mean they don't try to guide me into making good decisions. That is an act of love, is it not? To make sure that the person you love is making a good decision and behaving in a way that's good for their own well-being, of course. But the reason parents want us to behave a certain way and do certain things isn't because they'll love us more if we do. It's because we'll be healthier in societally and physically and mentally and in all sorts of ways if we do the things that they tell us, if they're wise and loving parents. But we start to grow up. And for most of us, our next journey is going to school. So we go to school around 5 or 6 years old. Now, little kids, they are so fun to watch because they get along usually pretty quickly, pretty easily. They make friends so fast because at that point, they're all coming from the base of being loved at home, and they all have similar interests, playing games, having stories read to them. They have a lot in common because they haven't diversified that much yet. They have a lot more in common when we're kids, right? So it's easy to start up a game of any kind with a bunch of kids because they all like playing games, just about. As we age, we do start to notice that some kids are more popular than others. Some kids are liked more than others. And we start to recognize that there are certain attributes about us that are that we find more attractive and that other people find more attractive. And maybe we feel a pressure to develop those characteristics. Or if we don't feel we have those, maybe we feel we have to develop some other characteristic, or we have to find a different group of friends who also don't have those characteristics, so they form a different kind of friendship group. The people who don't fit in, or whatever. And we start to get this idea that, in a sense, love is conditional. Nobody at school loves me like my parents do. My parents love me just because I'm their son. But being the son of my parents means nothing to a bunch of kids at school. That's not going to affect how they view me. They're going to size me up. I'm going to size them up. I'm going to see which kids, maybe we have similar thinking, maybe we like the same sports teams, maybe we like playing the same games. Who knows? But for whatever reason, we start to realize that out in society, our love is more, or at least, and here I'm using love in different terms. It's not the same love as parental love. Maybe you could call it attention, or validation. It's earned now. It's earned. We have to earn it. Now, we might not, some people, to feel that validation, they might need to be liked by a lot of people. Some people, to feel that validation, they might just need to be liked by a certain kind of person. Or maybe or one person in general. If they start to develop a crush on that one person, they might just want that person to notice them. And so our view of love, I guess, in a sense, shifts from when we start to prioritize that more. You start to see this with kids when they start to not want their parents to hug them and stuff in public, and they want to be independent of that. It's not that they don't love their parents. It's kind of like, yeah, well, the ego starts to come into play. Being loved by your parents is not at all to your own credit. Your parents love you because you're their kid. Of course they love you. Right? You ever heard that phrase of face only a mother could love? Right? I mean, so you don't get any credit for having your parents love. But if you can gain positive attention at school, now you're kind of earning you're winning hearts and winning affections, right? So we start to develop this idea, and we start to like it. And part of it is our ego. It's not enough to be loved. We want to be lovable. And there's a difference. If our parents truly love us with an unconditional love, then it doesn't matter if we're lovable. We're loved anyway. It's not that we're lovable, it's that they're loving. But out society, it doesn't work that way. People aren't particularly loving, to be honest. They usually are just attracted to whatever attracts them. So out there, we want to be lovable. And so we have to think about how we appear to others and what people find lovable and what they don't find lovable. So this is where our mentality kind of moves from early childhood into, especially when you get into the middle school years and that kind of thing, where cliques start to form and people are really concerned. People become really self-conscious because they're being judged. And the reason people care about being judged is they want to be judged as valuable. They want to be judged as lovable. They want to be seen as desirable to be around and to know and to talk with and that kind of thing, right? Okay, I'm going to pause here as I did in my previous series because I don't like to have any of my segments go over 15 minutes if I can help it. But I'll continue with this in the second video.